countdown to the last comic shop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, it is now time for more of the Last Comic Shop podcast.
That's right. We are opening up the shop to newbies to help them find their way underneath this giant comic book tent.
And we're keeping the lights on for the oldies who enjoy the old-timey serials. But will we continue? Will it be a good time? Tune in and see.
All right.
The last leg of the relay and it fell apart.
It wasn't a well-thought-out plan.
But you know what's always a well-thought-out plan is the Last Comic Shop's a continued effort to talk to comic book creators. That's right. Comic book creators are our bread and butter. Without them, nobody would create comics, and what would we have to read? I'm the host with the most, Andy Larson. I'm joined by Chad Smith and Jay Scott, and we've got a comic book creator on today's program, somebody that I would like to say is a good friend of the show. He's been on the show a couple times, but we haven't had him on since, I believe, Flash Gordon, like 2 years ago or something like that.
Yes, it was. We just gotten rabbits as pets, so I was cleaning up downstairs right before I came up here, and yeah, it has been 2 years. God, time flies.
I know.
Are there more rabbits now than when you just got them?
No, we have two. They're sisters, so yeah, we don't have a tribal situation happening there, fortunately.
But that is Ben Morse, and we are so glad to have you back on the show. A tremendous comic book creator, tremendous artist. Ben, I would probably say you are in my top 10 comic book artists that are currently doing work right now. I mean,
thank you.
That's not blowing smoke. I really, really do love your design, character creation, just the way you put together books is excellent. Whether it was August, whether it was my personal favorite, We Are Scarlet Twilight, which we're going to be talking about here in this opening segment. Now, you've got a sequel to We Are Scarlet Twilight coming out here, hopefully in Kickstarter soon. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about your latest project before we get going on today's show. So the floor is yours, sir. What's going on with Cobalt Crisis?
I want to thank you first for that very kind introduction. Thank you guys for having me back on the show. I love talking comics to you guys. But Cobalt Crisis is the sequel to We Are Scarlet Twilight. It's a bit of Secret Wars and Crisis on Infinite Earths if it had been done in the 1940s. So you get all that big scope, the character deaths, the universes colliding, the unexpected characters showing up, but you also get that sort of pulpy Golden Age vibe. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really fun combination. It's something that I don't think I've really seen before. And that's the reason primarily I went back to the world. When I was ending the original We Are Scarlet Twilight, I was very happy with the ending. I did leave a little bit of a note at the end that I could pick up on. I had a rough story in my head that sort of involved leaning a little bit away from the sort of Art Deco Batman-y influences that the first one had, and getting into a little bit more of the Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers stuff that was kind of a present in the first one, but it was a little bit more ground level. And I thought it just doesn't quite sing in the same way I feel like it should be doing. But I was reading Crisis on Infinite Earths a couple years ago and thought to myself, actually, I could probably graft that plot line onto something like this, bring in some of the tropes that you see in Crisis, that you see in Secret Wars, to expand the story in that way. To me, kept it like less science fiction-y and more comic booky, and I felt like that needed to be the tone. So then I was kind of excited about it, started writing it, and I'm working on it now. It's going to be out on Kickstarter probably in early May, late April, and I just couldn't be more excited to share it with everybody.
I was going to comment, too, about the big new addition from Captain Lancet to, what's your superhero's name? The Star
Nomad.
Star Nomad.
It's his name, kind of. So I don't know if you guys are big fans of public domain Golden Age characters, but there are a few really good ones that you've seen used time and time again. The original Daredevil, where he's like half red and half black, is one you see a lot. You see the Black Terror, of course, and my favorite is Stardust, who was created by Fletcher Hanks in, I want to say, 39 or something like that. Now, the big rule with public domain characters is my limited research, and if you're listening, I'm not a lawyer, don't take any of my advice, but I've done a little bit of research to make myself feel better. I've seen Stardust used in a lot of other projects. I'm fairly certain he's fallen into the public domain. But the big rule to be safe that I've found is you cannot use their actual name, or shouldn't use their actual name. and you don't want to feature him on the cover necessarily. So that really worked well for me because I could let now Star Nomad kind of play the role that Pariah and Monitor played in the original Crisis. So he's going by a different name because his world's been destroyed. He's trying to find a way to stop it from happening to other universes, and he's kind of gone, changed his name to this moniker, to just reflect his change in status. So first, I hope big surprise in the book is that you're going to see some of those, public domain characters show up in this story. Some of them have reasons to be there. Some of them aren't happy about it. That's something that really got me excited about doing this. I looked at Crisis, where you've got Superman and the Golden Age Superman and Captain Marvel and Uncle Sam, all of whom are from different Earths, and that was pretty cool. So it was my way of doing, tipping my hat to that thing where you've got these characters that you just don't necessarily expect to see interact, but in the crossovers they do. The real struggle with a lot of sequels, if you have a story you're happy with, is you want not to repeat the other story. You do need the stakes get a little bigger, but the challenge is that the stakes get bigger, it doesn't feel the same, or it just feels like too much of a kitchen sink type thing. And that was kind of my hesitation in going back to it. But by basing it on some of those things, like, okay, we're going to bring in some public domain characters, have them play a big role, be sort of a faction in this struggle, and to do a lot of other things we see in Secret Wars and Crisis, I thought, yeah, that's going to be cool. To see it in the 1940s Golden Age style, where it's, some of the quick narration gets you through the story.
Yeah, I really liked how you were mixing sort of the genres. I thought it made it fresh because, obviously we've done Secret Wars to death at this point, and I can't tell you how many crises there are on crises.
Crisis? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, but this felt fresh. This didn't feel like, oh, it's just another retread. And I think it has something to do with that, mixing that golden age and those public domain characters with modern take on sort of the big superhero, all-encompassing crossover event.
Yeah, that's, what I think everybody loves about, Crisis or any of those stories is it just goes as big as a story can go. You've got the entire universe, the Big Bang, time travel, alternate universes. It just goes nuts. It's as epic as something could possibly be.
Oh, yeah. And the multiple versions all pointing at each other.
Yeah, we're going to have... well, that's one I don't want to give away. I did have I think you guys have gotten the Countdown book, I think. The fun thing about that was I had this idea for an alternate version of Captain Lancet that I kind of did in the style of Dark Knight Returns and some of the 80s Batman comics.
Yes.
Even down to the lettering.
Right. It was amazing. Let me just take a second to gush about that particular part of Countdown to Cobalt Crisis. Again, it shows your range. And not to blow smoke, but it's why you're one of my favorite artists. You have an amazing range and an amazing ability, whether it was with that or, oh gosh, I remember back when you were doing the August book and you were releasing the play sets, set designs that looked like they were from Captain Power in the 1980s. Yeah. And it was that attention to detail. If you're going to follow through on a shtick and actually, commit to it, and you do in spades, which is awesome. Are we going to see more of that? Are we going to see more Captain Lancets?
I'm going to say no. I did put in the foreword to that story. It's like, hey, this is just a fun look at a Captain Lancet that could have been, but I'm not always honest about things like this, so take that for what it is. But for now, I'm going to say it was just an idea. It was fun to put out there. To me, just changing styles is like, well, that's something I always have had to do. The thing I can bring to the comics, and I think the thing that makes it really worth doing, is not necessarily just to do it, but to really kind of tap into some of the feelings I want you to draw upon when you're looking at that stuff. With the August stuff, the conceit with that was that it's sort of a fake 80s cartoon that you kind of forgot about, and I'm bringing it back. So I wanted to just have some of that artwork out there that felt like something you might have remembered from childhood. It's like a box, the packaging, or like a fake coloring book or something like that. Just stuff that is based on stuff I remember that I loved. With that Captain Lancet story, the alternate one that was kind of Batman influenced, the two things about that I really wanted to do was, I just love Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, like I think everyone does. And I kind of wanted to just kind of reactivate that a little bit in people's minds by having some stuff that kind of looks like the Bird movie at parts, stuff that, I kind of looked at the color palette of Miller's book that Len Varley did and really tried to bring that in just to kind of place that mentally in that that period of Batman comics. And the other thing I wanted to do was, I always felt a little bit bad in some respect that with Captain Lancet, he's a vampire. It's a spoiler. In fact, he's the vampire. He's kind of Vlad the Impaler, sort of highly sanitized version of him. But I really played fast and loose with the vampire stuff. My workaround for that was he'd been around so long, gotten so strong that he doesn't really need to worry about drinking blood too much. He doesn't need to worry about staying out of the sun too much. He's just slightly sensitive to it. So I made this version of Captain Lancet, the Batman-inspired one. He's got all the troubles of being a vampire. He can he can't even be out. The moonlight reflecting from the sun hurts him. He hears really well. He doesn't drink blood, but he's like wasting away because of it, although he's still powerful and has, abilities. But I thought, if there's going to be an alternate Captain Lancet, he's going to follow every vampire rule down to the letter and pay for it when he doesn't. So,
well, regardless of what genre you're tapping into, it does always seem like you're having fun. The "You Fools Attack!" panels, or the homages to Dark Knight Returns or whatever. Like, it always seems like there's a certain joy in your books, which is really great to see in this day of age of comic books where so many things are just bland and lifeless and like they're supposed to be fun. You're having fun. So I'm always excited to see stuff like that.
Yeah, you gotta just grab people and shake them and say, "Yeah, look at this. This is fun. It's big. It's exciting." And that's what comics should be. And I write and draw and ink and color and letter and set up the design for these books. It takes a long time. And if it's not fun, boy, it's a tough slog to get through. So yeah, I'm definitely having a lot of fun with this stuff, and it's a joy to do.
And I'm looking forward to seeing so much out of Cobalt Crisis. Again, the whole idea of some character based off of Stardust with like I've read some of those Fletcher Hanks comic books, like with people, made into giant heads and then being thrown into the sun. It is crazy. I remember when Fantagraphics first reprinted We Will Destroy All Planets.
Yeah, it's in those really nice hardcovers with some of his other work. And his other work's insane, too. There's that jungle girl, I can't remember, Phantoma, I think is her name.
Phantoma or
She's
something.
Fun.
Yes.
I almost tried to think of a way to use her. I couldn't think of a good way to do it. Because she is just so scary, actually. Oh, yes. And despite being a good character, I thought like she kind of takes over the story a little bit.
Oh, and, such an awesome visual design. I mean, talk about, going from like Sheena the Jungle Queen into like Ghost Rider. That's pretty much it. Your typical beauty, swinging around in the jungle to going Skullface.
Yeah, it's like the end of the Raiders of the Lost Ark with those eagles or whatever they are, and it turns into this really, which is still kind of scary. That plays really well. And some of the other books in there, he had this one about a lumberjack. Basically goes from town to town, gets in the lumberjack crew, finds there's some fat cat exploiting the workers. He leads them in a revolt, and basically everybody gets killed but him, and then he goes on to the next town. I mean, it's just the Fletcher Hanks was just so. I mean, if you've read about his life, he was a troubled, kind of a mean guy, and there is this maliciousness in his stories, but there's also this like when a kid tells a story, then this happened, and then this truck did this, and then the truck stood up and went to school, like just that sort of nonsensical absence of logic that exists in Stardust. It actually is really fun because he'll just be like, then he turned the gangsters into rats and put them on the planet of ice. And it's like, yeah, sure, it's cool. I like that.
All right. You just had to wrap it up. Sure, why not? But no, it's that joy for comic books. It's that joy for the medium. It's that wonderful art. All of this stuff is going to be on display in Cobalt Crisis. Real quickly, before we get to commercial break, Ben, you said that it was going to be coming out on Kickstarter. Where can they find more information on Cobalt Crisis?
The best place is to search on Kickstarter for Scarlet Twilight Cobalt Crisis. You can get on the pre-launch there if I haven't launched yet. If not, you'll just be going to the live campaign page. You can also find me on YouTube as Benjamin Morse Comic Book Artist, and on Twitter at Benjamin W. Morse, and at Blue Sky, I believe it's the same thing. That's usually where you can find me, and I'll certainly be announcing everything that's going on with Cobalt Crisis on those platforms.
Super cool. All right, we'll be back with more Last Comic Shop right after these commercial breaks. Ben actually did pick a book that's not We Are Scarlet Twilight to read with us today. It is Batman and the Monster Men by Matt Wagner, and we'll have that review right after this.
BCWSupplies.com has everything a comic collector could need. Boards, bags, long boxes, and so much else for our ever so increasing collections. And you can save 10% on your total order by using promo code LCSPOD at checkout. Not only does this take 10% off BCW Supplies' already low prices, but it supports my favorite podcast, The Last Comic Shop. So get all your collecting gear at bcwsupplies.com and save 10% on your order with promo code LCSPOD at checkout. That's LCSPOD at checkout. Happy hunting!
Last Comic Shop listeners, would you go to Kickstarter and search for Suspicious Behavior Productions? Because if you do, you can get the first issue of our comedy, horror, political satire by Centena Kill. And you can get your first edition autographed print copy of Invasion from Planet WrestleTopia, the complete series, all for just $19. But you only have until May 15th. So go to Kickstarter, look for us, Suspicious Behavior Productions. Thank you for your support.
And we're back, kids, to go over this book that came out in January 2006. It is The Dark Moon Rising Batman and the Monster Men. Now, Mr. J. Andrew Scott, who are the primary creatives behind Batman and the Monster Men, the 6-issue series?
All right, this was a 6-issue series by Matt Wagner on story and art, with Dave Stewart handling the colors and Rob Lee on lettering. And all the covers were beautifully painted by Wagner and Stewart.
Very cool. And this particular 6-issue story, I keep saying it's a 6-issue story.
Well, it was 6 issues, but then there was a second part because it was the first of his 2-part Dark Moon Rising series, which sort of took old Batman stories and modernized them. So
yes.
Oh,
Yes, these are both Golden Age stories. That is why I'm a huge fan of these, Chad. Detective Comics 36, I think, is Batman and the Monster Men, maybe. But I definitely know that it's Mad Monk, which is the second part, where he takes those two characters. By the way, Mad Monk, that issue written by Gardner Fox. That's why it's so neat, with like bat gyros and batarangs and supervillains. Like Gardner Fox did all that jazz. So
it's also set like right between the events of Batman Year One, the Frank Miller story, and then Batman: The Man Who Laughs. So
yeah,
it's sort of in that modern retelling of Golden Age Batman.
Who knew? Certainly not I. So it also would be helpful to know what is going on in this 6-issue miniseries that ended up being the first part of a 2-part series, which included things that were sandwiched in between Batman Year One and Batman, The Man Who Laughs. So, Mr. Benjamin Morse, can you please give us a quick synopsis?
So, like everyone's mentioned, it's sort of a reimagining of a Golden Age story, trying to place it in Batman's more modern, sort of pre-New 52 continuity. Introduction of Hugo Strange, and he's and kind of reintroduces us that with modern pacing and contextualizes it within Batman's more established timeline with Year One and all that stuff. So Batman is managing a relationship with Julie Madison, who he's getting closer with, and finding trouble balancing his Batman life and his Bruce Wayne life as they become closer. Julie Madison's father is having some financial difficulties that gets him involved with the Maroni and Falcone families. And in the background, Hugo Strange is developing mutant monsters to carry out his evil plans as part of his scientific research. So Batman has got his work cut out for him handling all these threats.
Very cool. Andy, why don't you give us the opening salvo? What did you think?
Well, again, I really love Matt Wagner's work. I've loved his work since Mage and Grendel, and again, anytime he's doing both story and art is a real treat, and especially if you look at some of these covers. That's what first drew me in to Batman and the Monster Men. Although, again, I think I read these out of order, honestly, when I first picked them up. I think I picked up Mad Monk because for anybody that's listened to The Last Comic Shop, everybody knows that the Mad Monk 2-parter in Detective Comics is one of my favorite Batman stories of all time. Just because it's really super creepy, and there's werewolves and vampires and like a really neat looking supervillain, the Mad Monk. And the Mad Monk done by Matt Wagner kind of tries to include all that stuff. He gives them evil cultists and drops them into a basement full with that spike trap, that classic spike trap that you see in a lot of, where the walls are closing in on, and Batman's got to, brace himself so that he doesn't get impaled. And so I read that, and I was just like, ooh, this is super neat. I should go back and read Monster Men, and I did, and I'm really happy that I did. It's amazing to me how folks can take what is really, like, in the original Detective Comics, just kind of like throwaway ideas, to be honest. Like Julie Madison, I think she again first appears in the Mad Monk, which actually precedes the Monster Men story in the actual real Detective Comics, but she just shows up in that issue. Before that issue, Batman doesn't have a fiance. Batman's not dating anybody, to be honest. He just usually just walking around smoking a pipe and trying to be cool. But then they introduced that he has a fiance, they introduced this love interest, and the fact that Matt Wagner takes that and just runs with it, gives her a dad, makes the dad incorporated into the Falcones and the Maronis and all that crime stuff that you got from year one, makes her, I think is she a district attorney or a lawyer, or she's something in this?
She's a lawyer in training. She's at law school.
But the fact that she's like figuring out that like something's going on with Bruce Wayne, how he always has all these cuts and bruises all over himself.
Bullet holes.
He's like, I was in a skiing accident with bullets. You never know. Trees might shoot at you. It's weird. But it was really, to me, kind of amazing how you can take a talent like Matt Wagner and just let him run. And he'll come up with what in essence is a much better story for Batman and the Monster Men than what we originally got even in Detective Comics, even though that's kind of kitschy and fun. So that's my initial thought. I really love these stories. So
okay, let's go JA next. What did you think of this?
It was fun. It really reminded me of year one. And when I went back and I looked up the history, then I understood why it reminded me so much of year one, because it was very much in that vein, sort of a modern reimagining, retelling of a Golden Age story and of Batman's origins. I don't know if it was on purpose, but as I read it, I was like, what exactly was Hugo Strange's whole thing? What was he trying to do besides just make some monsters and get revenge on people? He wanted to grow hair? I don't know.
I think he did. He wanted to eventually make himself handsome, taller, and nice head of hair on there.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all those things that bully lady made fun of him for being short and not having.
I mean, he's training in his basement, like that opening scene where like you think it's Batman, but it's Hugo Strange who's training on the gymnast equipment or whatever, and like you're like, oh, this guy has a massive inferiority complex. Like he wants to be Batman, but he has not been blessed with such physical attributes. So like he's saying, hey, science is a good way to fix that, and so let me experiment on mental patients. Shrugs.
Yeah, here's some cash. Go get me some hobos.
All right. But I did love the little nods to sort of the Batman to come, where he's debuting the Batmobile, sans fins on the back, and Alfred says, are you going to put some fins on that? Almost as a joke, and he's like, you know what? I was thinking about that. I haven't finished yet.
I personally like the Bat beeper. I think that makes way more sense than the Bat symbol, but it's probably a lot less cool.
My favorite part of this entire, in terms of just Batman, is that one issue where they dump him in the pit with the three monster men, and he has to get out with just his wits. I think that kind of encapsulates to me, like, again, why Batman is, even at that early part of his career, is still like, yeah, this guy's going to do something. Like, he's not going to be a flash in the pan. He's going to, the way that he escapes, and then like Hugo's like, oh my gosh, this guy's awesome. I need some of that DNA. That's like Serpentor DNA. I need some.
There you go. It takes a genius wit to know big guys, bad knees. Kick him there. Ben, this was your story you brought to the table, sir. What made you pick Batman, the Monster Men?
Obviously, I love pulp, Golden Age atmosphere, and this book was kind of an attempt to do what I was trying to do with some of my books, which is take that old stuff, polish it off, keep the charm of it, and introduce it to modern audiences. I love the initial Batman stories. I think of any Golden Age stuff that you go back and read, Captain Marvel's pretty strong if you go back and read those C.C. Beck's issues, but I think Batman's issues really shine, even when you have the weird stuff that isn't quite figured out yet, where he's shooting people or he's doing things that we don't see as Batman as we've come to understand it. Those stories work. They're dark, they're interesting, and they're engaging. What I loved about this reintroduction is, of course, besides just Matt Wagner and Dave Stewart's artwork, which I'd say it's not the most in-your-face stuff that even like Tim Sale, while, certainly nobody confused them with Rob Liefeld or Jim Lee in terms of impact, I think that he has a really good sense of making very appealing artwork, very clear artwork, and when things need to look cool, like the introduction of the Batmobile you mentioned, they look cool. In fact, that's one of my favorite Batmobiles of all time. And I'd forgotten about that scene until I reread it this weekend. The other thing I think I really loved about this that made me want to go back to it was just I always love his version of Gotham, but I think placing it within the larger sort of unofficial pre-New 52 continuity always fits with my idea of what Batman and Gotham's kind of struggle was, because he always was just like, he touched on this in the Nolan movies a little bit, he kind of thought I'd fight gangsters for a couple years, break the back of the syndicates, and it would be okay. And then he keeps getting sidetracked fighting psychos who make monsters or poison reservoirs and, make riddles and things like that. And so he's kind of getting drawn away from his initial goal, which is just to clean up a fairly straightforward problem with this new world of, monsters and madmen and all that stuff. So I just love that part of the Gotham story. The other thing I have to say that I really didn't remember until I was rereading is there are just so many great touches that Matt Wagner puts in there. The subplot with the sidekick that Hugo Strange has, and I forget his name, one of his monsters is that guy's brother, and he knows this treatment is brutal and horrific, but he had a pre-existing condition, and there was a slim chance they might be able to fix him by turning him into this monster. And that story, I think they give it probably 2 pages, but it's heartbreaking. This monster, to spoil a little bit, gets killed. That's his brother, and he just charges in there. He's like, he's ready to die too. And I'm like, man, they really get you with that. And I think that's what you really get out of something where you're taking these old Golden Age stories that were sometimes not even a full issue as we understand it now. It'd be 14, 15 pages, giving it 6 issues, pacing out some of the plot stuff so it really has time to give you impact. That was a great example, I think, of very one-dimensional character that was very forgettable and a little regrettable in terms of stereotypes that were being used in the 30s and the 40s, but really given that character like a great motivation and I'll remember that now. That was a really sad thing to happen. So I think is almost emblematic of what I really like about Matt Wagner is revisiting these stories. He takes all the good stuff that was there and gives everything about it a chance to shine. Alfred's got some great lines. The complexity they give to Julie Madison and Bruce Wayne's relationship is really good. You sense that Bruce Wayne really likes this girl, knows it's not going to work out because he's like, I didn't think this through, but there's no way I can keep this much from someone and be involved with it.
There you go. You can see Bruce getting more and more conflicted as it goes. But yeah, I would love to echo with the Matt Wagner. He is someone who the details are there. The storytelling beats are there, but so is the cool factor. And so often you get artists who can do one or the other really well, but rarely is it all wrapped up in one complete package the way Matt Wagner can do it. Whether it's his backgrounds and his cityscapes, whether it is, just those Batman scenes when he's charging in, like the black leather cape stuff never looks cooler than when Matt Wagner does it. My only critique would be his females are not as elegant as some other pulp artists, Mr. Morse included, usually you would see. But at the same time, like it's a special set of skills to be able to have so much detail in the craft, yet still be able to pull out, like, no, these are the shots we need to hit. These are the story beats that are going to matter for people. And Matt Wagner can do it all.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there. As I was reading through it, there were some pages and panels. I was like, oh, and then you would turn the page and just be blown away by Batman on a skyscraper with, epic Gotham behind him and the flowing cape. And I was like, oh, I think he spent a little bit more time on this panel or this page than the other pages. That's not a critique by any means. I just think there were certain parts that really sort of leaned into his full feature set, and the covers are painted covers, just beautiful. I don't think I've gushed at all about the covers. The covers had me. If I was buying this back in the day in a comic book shop, the covers alone would have sold the series for me.
Yeah, they were always intriguing, and I think this is back from when covers needed to have something to do with the story instead of just being a cool shot of the character. Although, I think we all love that. You're getting something that's going to happen. You get one of them. There's one with just Batman in a cell, and it's like, okay, it's kind of an old trick. I've seen it in a lot of covers, but you're intrigued. What happened to Batman? How's he going to get out of there? They sell the story. They're covers that were, aside from just the craftsmanship of them, hard to pass up because you just say, hey, I know that if that's going to happen in this book, this is going to be worth my, at the time, $3.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there's that one cover with I think it's one of the monster men just grabbing Batman by the cape and cowl and just kind of deadlifting him there. Like it's just this massive hand, just like two hams, just like pressed together, just this massive hand. And again, that sets up that issue, which again is probably my favorite issue in this. Take Batman out of all the gadgets, all the money, all the caves, all the everything. You just put them in a pit with three monsters that just want to eat him. Like they just want to kill him and eat him, and he has to escape from that. And just again, the way that he does it, I can't gush enough about that issue. Just because again, the thought process. Matt Wagner's always been really good at. Whether it was way back in the day when he did Grendel, I love his thought panels and the way that his characters think things out. Again, that internal monologue, it never gets dry. It never gets old. It really adds something to the story that you're reading. And it just fits. And so I can't gush enough about not only the art, but just the writing. Matt Wagner's an awesome writer, whether it was this, whether it was Green Hornet Year One that he wrote. I really loved that too, and that was kind of like a similar thing where you're reintroducing a classic character to a new audience, like he's doing with these Batman classic stories. But I think the most interesting thing you said, Ben, too, is I want to piggyback on that comment about how this is back when Batman just thought he was going to be fighting gangsters. And then all these supervillains just start popping out of the woodwork. Again, a lot of other writers will say it's because Batman appeared on the scene and he changed the game. Like, if it hadn't been for Batman, then there wouldn't have been up the ante and you wouldn't have these other people coming out. But I really feel like Doctor Strange in this, like Hugo Strange, would have shown up anyways. Like, he had like his ideas and what he wanted to do. He wasn't actually a supervillain. He was a guy that was using science. Yeah, it's kind of creepy and stuff, but it's not like the Joker. It's not like he didn't put on a gaudy costume. He's not even the Penguin, with a bunch of umbrellas. Like, this guy is just wearing glasses, and he's just a mad scientist character. So I do feel like that's kind of like the transition point between the gangsters and then what we would later on get with like the just crazy supervillains. Like, you get that mad scientist kind of place. So yeah, it's a neat time for Batman.
Yeah, I mean, I love the unfolding horror that you get and I think that one thing I wanted to mention, you get the detective stuff in here really well. He's looking at the claw marks these things leave, and he's like, okay, what in the God's name is this? And then when you finally see these monsters, they're impressive and terrifying and huge and a big threat. But I think also for Batman, who has come to realize he's going to be now fighting monsters and threats of this scale and insanity, when these monsters end up going after the gangsters at the end, they're just like, what the hell, man? We just shake down people for money and fight other gangsters. We're not supposed to be fighting monsters, and it's a bloodbath and it's horrible. But you get that it's horrible to them. They're just you're seeing them face a threat that they are very blown away by. They're not just like, okay, this is a thing that could have happened to us that we needed to be worried about. They'd be horrified by anything that was that dangerous. But they're just like, what in God's name is this? This is not something that we ever conceived of having to worry about. But then you also see when they first start finding signs of this, the gangsters, they're like, do you think it could have been that Batman thing that's been around? So there's a sense that the world is getting weirder, and then when they encounter these monsters near the end that Hugo Strange unleashes on them, it becomes obviously worse than they ever had imagined. So I think there is this escalation in for the good guys and the bad guys in just how weird things are about to get in Gotham City.
Yeah, that's what you get for shaking the guy down. He was already paid up.
Yeah, they
shake
did
him
know
down
it.
again.
I love the Sopranos-ness of him just like knocking off the card game to get the money to pay them back. It's like, yeah, they were gonna figure that out. And I will say there is one criticism I have of Matt Wagner's writing in this story. I think he might be a top 10 writer for me, actually, so I'm certainly not knocking him. There are parts where it's a little too obvious, even for the comic booky type of story this is, where it's like, they said, how much did we lose in the card game? And Sal Maroni's like, 50,000. And somebody else like, how much did that doctor pay? 50. Oh my God. And he gets it down. He's like, okay, yeah, I think you should have seen that coming.
While being interrogated by Batman. It's like, Strange. Who's Strange? Oh, nothing. It's strange. The weather these days. Don't you think?
That was a little tortured. I can appreciate. I mean, when you need to keep a story moving at a certain pace. I would certainly rather the pacing stay what it was, and for some of the reveals to get characters doing what they then need to do be slightly offbeat or a little awkward. That's a good trade. That's a trade you want to make, and I think it's worth it because then you get scenes that can really breathe like that. And I think this is the centerpiece of the whole comic, really, the fight in the dungeon with those monsters. Where you see Batman get thrown in there, he's slightly drugged, he's getting hurt, he's losing parts of his belt and his costume, and things just keep getting worse. Monsters take away the belt, they start playing with all the gadgets, they set off a gas bomb, and it's almost a Spielbergian level of complexity in that fight, whereas, okay, he's figured out he's fighting monsters, he's prepared for that, then they get his utility belt, they set off this gas bomb, and he's like, okay, now I gotta stop that thing from knocking me out before it knocks them out, and then beat these guys, and then get out of here. And I think you can only do that when you're a master storyteller like Matt Wagner is, but also when you have a style like his, where you have something that can accommodate really small panels, very simple actions, almost like the sort of icons you see on a road sign that's just almost a silhouette. He gets into that level of simplicity so he can really quickly lay out all these beats, and you have a very complex action scene that completely works, completely flows in a way that's very hard to do in comics. So I think that's the trade-off you make, and I think Matt Wagner is one of the best people at doing that, really just taking you through a scene, reestablishing the stakes at every point so the tension's there, and then just making it all in service of Batman being really cool. Even though things go worse for him, he's losing parts of his costume, his gadgets, he still gets out of there, and even the villains are just like, oh my God, that was incredible. They were just watching Michael Jordan put up 50 points on somebody, and they're impressed. That's fun to see.
Right. Very cool. We'll see how impressed you were with our next segment when we come back with our ratings.
LastComicShopPodcast.com is the destination for all things shop. Plan your week with upcoming show schedules, the latest books, recommendations, and chatter from the crew. Subscribe to the show on all major podcasting platforms from one convenient location. Show your support and browse the merch store. T-shirts, tanks, hoodies for the fam, coffee mugs, magnets, totes, and more. Check out exclusive content through the show's YouTube channel and follow the pod on Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, and others. All this and so much more at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com. www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com.
If you're an indie creator looking for a home for your comic book, graphic novel, short story collection, or novel, then you've come to the right place. Any One World is a full-service publisher and distributor which can take your creator-owned project and showcase it to the world. We offer two primary distribution channels: digital distribution, where we'll sell your book in our digital bookstore; digital and print distribution, where we'll sell your book in our digital bookstore and distribute through physical bookstores across the UK, USA, and Canada. In addition to distribution, Any One World can also work with you to publish your book. We'll publish your book digitally, helping you source artists, edit, format, and publish your book in digital format. Digital and print. We'll publish your book digitally and produce and distribute print copies of your work. Digital, print, and merch. We'll publish digital and print copies of your book and then work with you to design or distribute products and add-ons such as t-shirts, posters, and more. On top of all of this, we can offer additional paid services where required, specifically cover design, editing, and formatting. Unlike many traditional publishers, Any One World gives indie creators maximum control and flexibility over publishing and distribution. So if you're looking to partner with us to distribute existing books or publish something new, read carefully through the information below and fill out a submission form.
All right, we're back with more of The Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for ratings, where we don't hope you turn into a monster man. We're going to give you ratings. There's no need to get vicious, cruel. The Prince of the Monster Men, that was the best one. He's like, look at this guy. He's so handsome. He's got that Batman DNA. Any case, we got a 1 out of 4 scale coming from J.A. Scott. He is not a monster man, but he does give us these scales. So what do you got for us this week?
I might not be a monster man, but we are going to be rating this book out of Monster Men 1 out of 4.
Oh,
Monster Men.
That's how many were there. Plus with the Prince, they could have been like the Beatles. They were a quartet.
So if they are the Beatles, would that make the Prince Lennon or McCartney? Or Ringo?
Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and start off with you, J.A. You had mentioned in the past segment that there were some parts of the plot that were like, meh. So did that impact your overall rating?
I would be remiss if I didn't say that I love this book. Going back to that big fight in the dungeon when he first meets the Monster Men, I just loved the story beat where he has his cape caught and he's like, capes are great until they don't work anymore.
Mental note. Tearaway cape.
And then the cape rips, and he's still fighting in his cowl. And I was waiting for his shirt to come off, because that would have been the creme de la creme, piece de resistance, if he would have been fighting bare chested with the cowl still on, sort of the homage to the 70s, early 80s Batman. But so many good beats at the end as well when he's wrapping it up. It was there to just be tied in a nice little bow, and he didn't do that, Matt Wagner. I love that moment where he shows Julie's dad, and he's just sitting there shaking in his chair in the dark because Batman knows his name.
Yeah, it's not going to end well for that guy.
Yeah, and I really appreciated that sort of, the building up of Batman's legend and the way it fits into year one and what comes after. Not only is it as a great retelling of a classic story, but it's a really nice placement of it within the sort of the modern retelling of the pre-52 Batman. So I'm going to give it 3.5. I thought it was great. It was a great story. I really enjoyed it. Did I struggle at times with the art? Yes, but they were just short struggles. And then I would turn the page and be blown away. So I can't say that I hated it. I mean, it was incredible art, but I think to Chad's point, he did sometimes struggle with the female form. Maybe I was ready for it to be a bit more golden era, and they weren't quite as soft as they needed to be. So it's 3.5 Monster Men for me.
We'll go to Chad next. Chad, what do you say?
I was trying to think of how I felt about this. I really enjoyed reading it. I didn't feel like there was a whole lot off other than a couple images here or there. But I love these stories. I love that time period. I love fallible Batman, where it's like, oh no, he's actually at risk whenever you dump him in there, and he's got to figure his way out and be a detective. And I don't know. And Matt Wagner, his art is wonderful. His storytelling I thought worked for me. Do I think it's perfect? I don't, so I'm going to go 3.75 Monster Men. So 3 big and burly ones and one guy who's, just a little bit scrawny, like, hey guys, what are we going to do now?
All right. I'm going to go next. I think this is a 3.5 as well. I'm primarily giving it a 3.5 because I really do love Batman and the Mad Monk, which is the sequel to this. Again, that was the book that I first picked up. That was the one that got me into this whole notion of Matt Wagner reinventing the wheel a little bit with some of these classic Batman stories. So that's always going to be my favorite. If I have to compare the two, this is always going to be like, oh, that was a nice horse divorce, don't mind if I do, but I want the main course, which is Batman and the Mad Monk. So I really hope that anybody that enjoyed reading this will then go on and read Mad Monk, because I think it's an awesome story. I will say this, though. This book was the reason why eventually I came up with a whole reading list. I decided to track down all of the issues that would be the reinvention of Batman and try to put it into a timeline, like year one, and then, Monster Man, and then Mad Monk, and then like Long Halloween. Where does that pop in? Where does the Man That Laughs pops in? Where does Dark Victory pop in? Where does year two? Because eventually you get year two. I mean, come on. So like all of those, where did those books pop in? So I'm still tweaking it. Even like 10 years down the road, I'm still tweaking it because I'm like, no, that kind of doesn't add up when you take into this account from this story, and they're all done by different artists and writers. So it's never going to be perfect, but still, it's really neat what DC did in this era where they took all these awesome Batman stories that were classic in their own right, and they retold them for modern audiences, because I just think it was a great idea. So 3.5. Ben, finish this out.
Well, I wish I had more of a different take, but I'm a 3.75. This is a classic Batman story, obviously, just kind of paced out in a modern style. It holds up just as well today as it did in 2006. And you see Matt Wagner at the height of his powers. He was the perfect person to do this. It's definitely the Batman that you want to read about, that, when you watch Batman the animated series, or just have the idea of Batman in your head. This is the guy. It nails it. It gets the character perfectly. I do have to ding it for a couple of reasons that mostly have to do with, as great a storyteller as Matt Wagner is, there are parts where things were unclear and I had to go back a couple of pages and figure out. I didn't understand that the old Batmobile, which was just a regular car he was driving around, was destroyed at some point, and that necessitated then the new Batmobile to be introduced. I kind of had to go back. It wasn't clear enough that was Batman wrecking his old car to do something, that then he'd have to replace it in some way.
The night car.
Yeah,
it wasn't quite a Batmobile yet, just the night car.
Yeah, well, you saw, I think either the police or the gangsters were like finding parts of it and realizing, hey, this wasn't just some guy's car. This was probably Batman's car. And then Alfred's talking about it later. So I kind of had to oh, wait a second. Oh, okay, now I understand what happened, which is not the biggest sin in the world, but it certainly is something that loses that 0.25. The other thing that I think was a little unclear, everybody likes Batman monologuing, and he gets his own font, which makes it work. Occasionally Jim Gordon gets a monologue, but I think 4 or 5 characters got to have their internal monologue going on, and I wasn't sure who it was at certain points. And I kind of thought of Wayne's World, where at some point Ed O'Neill starts to talk to the camera and narrate his story, and Wayne says, whoa, 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 only me and Garth get to talk to the camera. I think they could have used a little bit of that, because you had at one point what I thought was Batman or Gordon talking, and it was increasingly clear it was Julie's dad. Wait a second, this isn't stuff Batman would say or think, and then I go back and figure out what it was. So I have to ding at the 0.25 because of just some points that were unclear, but it's a great story. It's got a great love story. It's got a great A-plot. The larger story of how Gotham evolves and Batman's story evolves is great. And I think you have a classic Batman scene that we've discussed in the middle there that holds up with any fight that it kind of is in the top 10 Batman fights. So a lot of great stuff here. Highly recommend it.
All right. And one other thing that we always recommend on every single Last Comic Shop is recommendations. Yes, it's our time of every single show where if you are out at a local comic book shop and you're picking up Batman and the Monster Men, which we hope that you do, or some of Ben Morse is great stuff, which I still think, Red 5.
Yeah, Red 5.
Yeah,
you can go to red5.com and get those there, and they do put them out in the shops as well.
Yeah, August and We Are Scarlet Twilight were all put out in single issues, so you can pick those up as well. But here are some other recommendations that we hope you check out. We're going to go ahead and start off with J.A. J.A., what do you got this week?
I'm taking us back to year one, Batman Year One by Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli. If you're interested in the sort of Golden Age Batman story retelling, if you like this book and you want to see where this idea of retelling the Batman stories in a sort of more modern and gritty way, it starts with year one. What I love about it, because it's not just the first year of Batman and him getting his costume and sort of his wings, if you will, it's also a beautiful telling of Jim Gordon and his introduction to Gotham as a new detective and figuring out his way in Gotham, and also Selina Kyle's Catwoman. So you get some foundational characters in the Batman mythos that's just incredible. And the art in that, David Mazzucchelli has never been better than that book. It's very muted, it's very gritty, and it's just a wonderful story. So I think that was very much the foundation that Matt Wagner built a lot of his Monsterman story on. So I would suggest you go back to the beginning.
Okay. And speaking of going back to the beginning, my recommendation is going back to some of the roots of what will be in the Superman movie that will be coming out in just a couple months here. Again, everybody's a buzz about Crypto, and he's an adorable little puppy, ain't he? But that made me want to go back and read some of those classic Silver Age stories, pre-Silver Age stories of Superman, where all this stuff came about. And a great collection that you can pick up at your local comic book shop is Superman in the 50s. That's right. It is a marvelously put together book of some of the best stories from that particular era of Superman, which, again, sometimes folks get kind of tongue-in-cheek. Oh, there's Superman with a lion's head. Oh, Superman, doesn't have a face for an issue, and then all of a sudden you got to decide what his face is going to be. But there are some really, really wonderful stories in here. From the first time Superman fights other folks from Krypton, with the 3 Supermen from Krypton. Again, Crypto's first appearance is in here. Supergirl's first appearance in here for Otto Bender. There's a great team up between Lex Luthor and Mr. Mxyzptlk.
Mxyzptlk, I think, is how you go with it. There was, in a letter column in the 80s, I think they actually just spelled it out, and I've always remembered it.
Oh.
Mxyzptlk.
And he teams up also with the Prankster to round out that gruesome trio. There's even an issue in here with art by Al Plastino, which is called The Death of Superman. None of these stories are more than 13 to 15 pages long. It's breezy, it's wonderful, it's everything that you just want right before bed almost. That's what I was reading. I was just reading right before bed. I was just reading like 2 of these Superman stories, and it was just a wonderful way to finish off my day. Nice stuff featuring the Man of Steel. So pick up Superman in the 50s. Chad?
Okay, so we've been dealing with Batman versus the Monster Men. I want to shift gears and go with Marvel versus the Monsters. And so there's a really fun series out right now. First issue hit last month with the Fantastic Four versus Godzilla by Ryan North and John Romita Jr. The second issue in the series against the Hulk just hit last week, but I haven't picked mine up yet. But man, is this fun. You got King Ghidorah is now the Herald of Galactus, and Godzilla's out there trying to take him down with the Fantastic Four and Silver Surfer in tow. It's just silly, crazy monsterness, and it's finding its way. It's fighting its way throughout the Marvel Universe, and it's at your local comic shops currently. So get out there and pick up some new books, and it's good times.
All right, Ben, finish us off.
All right, I'm going to recommend another Matt Wagner story that's very similar to this, called Trinity. It's the first meeting in sort of, not Elseworlds, but kind of out of continuity as far as like the issue-to-issue monthly stuff of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman starting to work together. So it's a really fun adventure, but it stays grounded in a way that's pretty satisfying. Batman still seems to have a good role in it. Gotham is Gotham. Metropolis is Metropolis. It's very much the archetypal versions of all these characters, and you get to see them kind of fighting Ra's al Ghul and Bizarro in a very fun adventure. It's great if you're a fan of Matt Wagner. It's great if you're a fan of if you're just a really big DC fan and you love the classic aspect of those characters. This is a take on it that gives you all that stuff, but it doesn't seem old. It doesn't seem, kind of like when you go back and read the old comics and the pacing isn't what you're used to. It's modern in every way you want it to be, and it's classic in every way that you want it to be. So Trinity is my recommendation.
And one thing we always recommend is that you rate and review and subscribe to The Last Comic Shop so you don't miss any of our episodes. And you can do that over at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com. It's a terrific website where you can find not only all the episodes that will be coming up over the next couple of weeks, it's going to be movie mayhem. So we're going to be having all these awesome shows featuring Daredevil and the Thunderbolts movie and Atomic Blonde and The Shadow with Alec Baldwin. So if you like movies paired with comic books, make sure that you're checking out Movie Mayhem all for the next couple of weeks. And also make sure that you're checking out that website because we've got an awesome collection of back issues. It's our archives, right? It's all of the books that we've done previously, including previous episodes with our good friend Ben. If you want to hear about his other book, August, then we've got an episode in the archives with that. If you want to hear him talk about the Flash Gordon movie from the 80s and the Alex Raymond stuff, we've got an episode about that. We even have one about Twilight, done by Howard Chaykin. So Ben's been a tremendous guest on the Last Comic Shop in the past, and you can listen to all of his past episodes in our archives whenever you wish.
And while we might be the Last Comic Shop podcast, we don't want to be the last comic shop. So we encourage you guys to get out there and support those comic book creators, support those comic shops, whether it's picking up things like Batman and the Monster Men, or more Matt Wagner Batman fun with DC's Trinity, or current things like the FFV Godzilla or Superman in the 50s, which is more current to the 50s, or going out there to those Kickstarters and supporting creators the best way possible by going direct through them for their goods and services and keeping the whole comic book stream going. We hope you guys are taking care to do that stuff. And then circle back to our website, www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com, where you can find links to past shows and what else, J.A.?
A link to our merch store where you can get t-shirts, coffee mugs, tote bags to carry around all those comic books you just bought. And this week only, capes that break away. That's right, the breakaway cape.
That's right. Just in case you wanted a cape, but then didn't want a cape at other points. Like, now you have the choice. I wonder if you can reattach it after it breaks away. Like, does it have a zipper? Does it have, like, Velcro?
Velcro. I would imagine Velcro.
That says pulpy. It's got those buttons.
It's like the breakaway workout pants, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Well, one thing that we hope is a huge breakaway hit is Cobalt Crisis from our good friend Ben. Ben, why don't you real quickly tell, again, everyone where they can find your awesome work as well as stuff about the upcoming Cobalt Crisis.
So We Are Scarlet Twilight was my first Kickstarter book, and this new book is going to be the sequel to it. It's called Cobalt Crisis. It's a continuation of the story, which drew heavily on pulp and Golden Age stuff, but in a modern style, much like what we've been talking about today. This new story is an expansion of the world. It's basically taking Crisis on Infinite Earths or Secret Wars, but doing that in the style of the Golden Age. So you get all that pulpy atmosphere mixed with all the big world-shattering events that you get in a Crisis or a Big Two crossover. It's going to be a really fun ride. I've got a lot of great moments in there, a lot of great surprises, a lot of great drama, and I'm really pumped to get it out to people. So you can find that on Kickstarter. We should be launching late April or early May. If you search for Scarlet Twilight, Cobalt Crisis, you should be able to get right to that. In the meantime, you can check out my other comic, August, or the previous We Are Scarlet Twilight, if you go to red5comics.com, and you can order it from them.
All right, and we hope that you do. And until next week, I was the host with most, Andy Larson. I was joined by Jay Scott and Chad Smith, as well as the wonderful Ben Morse. And we hope that you will, again, support this awesome creator. I can't say how much I love his art. Ben, continue to keep that art flowing because I will keep on gobbling it up, sir. Until next week, stay safe, stay creative. That's right. It's important to do that. Like, make a podcast, make a comic book, make a souffle. I don't know how do you
people can't afford souffles anymore. What are you talking about?
The price of eggs. See you next week, folks.
The Last Comic Shop podcast was a 2025 Black Angus production.